back to Round the Table, your slow TV English class from the meeting point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. This week the topic of conversation has been opinion. Also coming up in this episode we have some quotes of the week. We also have some vocabulary which may be necessary when discussing opinions. We have a little phrase origin, some pronunciation problems and an interesting word. And if we have time, we'll have some phrasal verbs, but I'm not sure if we'll have time yet. So to begin with, let's do this. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. Do not overestimate the importance of your opinion, especially when it's uninvited. Not everyone cares as much as you do about what you think, and sometimes it might be better to hold your tongue and open your ears. When giving an opinion, using phrases such as "I get the impression that" or "as far as I can tell" allow for a bit of flexibility and a less dogmatic statement of facts. According to a recent report, concedes that we do not always have access to all the information, and "some people believe" or "it is said that" allows for the perspective of others not necessarily present to be introduced into the conversation. A debate is not something that we should set out to win. It is often seen as a binary argument. You have to be with me or against me. Our faith in the strength of our own beliefs means that it often takes a mountain of facts to change our mind, but a grain of evidence to confirm that which we already hold to be true. This unwillingness to concede ground, this entrenchment of ideas, is an impediment to progress. Sometimes, admitting that we are wrong can bring us closer to the truth. It's not as difficult as we might imagine, and can actually be quite liberating. A great deal of what we think we know is based on the common knowledge of the people around us. We cannot check the authenticity of everything we hear. Many of these beliefs we take for granted, based on the fact that we have heard them repeated so often. But the repetition of a myth does not make it true. Popular wisdom is popular, but it is not wisdom. The media is also largely responsible for how we perceive the world. Biases and prejudices determine how much importance the media gives to a story or the language it chooses to use in its reporting, which can greatly influence how we feel about an issue. The world of social media and the dreaded algorithm means that we are increasingly living in a bubble of like-minded individuals, where our concept of what is considered normal or extreme is distorted. These days, there are people of such diverse opinions that it seems as if we are living in parallel universes. Our opinions are formed by the people around us, and in turn we often try to sway the opinions of others. We are the product of the world in which we live. Our views on politics and religion are largely based on our environment. And in this world of fake news and post-truths, it is hard to know who has the right to say what is right. The wisdom of crowds. In this experiment, a group of people is asked to guess the number of sweets in a jar. Then the total is divided to find an average. The more people involved, the more accurate the estimate is. The theory is that for every person who is prone to overestimate, there is another who will underestimate. We have been testing this theory in class, and it actually works. The follow-up question was whether this theory could be used to decide public spending. Imagine everybody of voting age could go to a government website once a year and have a look at this pie chart representing spending for the past year. Every citizen would then have the opportunity to adjust the amount spent on education, healthcare, roads, etc., and the average is taken to calculate the expenditure for the coming year. A few people thought this was a great idea, possibly leading to the obsolescence of politicians, but most had little faith in the opinions of their fellow citizens. And now it's time for some quotations on the topic of opinion. Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions. Their lives a mimicry. Their passions a quotation. So says Oscar Wilde. It is very true that many people are only repeating the opinions of others. Many people believe the last thing they heard. Here's another one. The trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt. This word cocksure means very confident or overconfident. So this is a quote from Bertrand Russell, but this same idea has been said by many different people in different forms. There's a Shakespeare one that says the fool thinks he is a wise man, but the wise man knows he is a fool. There are many others about the more we learn, the more we know there is to learn, or the more ignorant we realise we are, something like that. So there are many quotations on the same theme. And one more from our anonymous donor. An opinion, if not supported by facts, is merely a wish. And I think a lot of people give opinions thinking they're facts, but they're not. It's just what they want to believe is true. Now let's look at a bit of vocabulary. Well, a couple of these could have been a what's the difference question, really. There's true and truth. Don't forget that true is an adjective. The story is true. But truth is a noun. So I am telling the truth is the phrase you need to learn. I am telling the truth. And then of course you've got discussion and argument. This is important vocabulary for this topic. A discussion is when you are talking about a theme. You can have the same opinion or you can have different opinions. If you have an argument, you have different opinions, and the conversation gets quite loud and sometimes quite aggressive. So an argument is much more negative, really. Opinionated is used to describe someone who has strong opinions. Also, there's an element of them not wanting to change their opinions, and also an element of them wanting to share their opinions rather too often. Sway. We often use this to try to sway someone's opinion. It means to influence or change somebody's mind a little bit. Not completely convince. It's not quite like convince. More influence. You can also use sway to show the movement of a tree in the breeze, imagine. Or maybe you can sway in time to the music. but today we're talking about swaying someone's opinion, which means to move them slightly in one direction, to influence. Bias is also a useful word. Bias is your tendency, often we're talking political bias, so a newspaper might have a right-wing or a left-wing bias. If you're watching a sports event, the referee is supposed to be unbiased, so you have an unbiased referee, or a biased referee. If Athletic lose, you blame it on the biased referee. Now let's look at some expressions to do with opinions. Speak your mind is to say exactly what you think. And call a spade is to speak in a very plain and direct way. And sometimes without considering the opinions of other people. Sometimes it can be a bit offensive when people say what they think, and sometimes it's better to hold your tongue, as we discussed before. But someone who's very direct speaking, they say he always calls a spade. So those two are about saying what you think. We've got a couple more here to do with changing your opinion. To have second thoughts is to reconsider your ideas, especially when somebody else is given a different opinion. You might have second thoughts about what you were thinking. You can change your tune. That is to change what you're saying, really. It's changing your opinion, but more about what you're saying. So you say one thing one day and you say something different the next day. Somebody might say, oh, you've changed your tune. Eat your words is to admit you are wrong. There's a lot of regret in eating your words. You have to apologize when you eat your words. Then we've got a few that refer to not having strong opinions. So to sit on the fence is you don't want to commit to one opinion or the other opinion, so you sit on the fence. Beat around the bush is when you're coming out with long sentences and you're not saying what you think, you're saying everything but your opinion, and you're not getting to the point of the conversation. And sometimes what you're saying goes on, and somebody says, come on, stop beating around the bush, get to the point. And then to hedge your bets is to avoid committing to one option or the other, a bit like sitting on the fence. And it's not making a commitment. Now, I've often thought this is a very strange phrase, to hedge your bets, because a hedge is like a fence or a boundary which is made of bushes or trees. I thought this is a very strange expression, so I thought I'd do a bit of research. So, as I said, a hedge is something that goes around a field, normally to keep the cows in, or something like that. So it's a boundary made out of bushes or trees. Then in the 1600s, apparently, it was started to be used more metaphorically to mean to limit or protect against loss, not just to protect animals, but to protect against loss, so to protect your money. Then in betting terminology, they started to have this phrase to hedge your bets, which meant if you put £10 on horse number 9 to win, then you might also put £5 on another horse, just in case, so as a sort of backup. So that was the original hedging your bets. So you're not really committing all your money on one horse. That's where the phrase hedge your bets comes from. Now, looking at this week's slow TV woodland background, you're probably admiring these little yellow flowers you can see in this view. Here's an interesting fact about these little yellow flowers. These flowers are called buttercups, In English, buttercups, like little cups of butter. Now the petals on these flowers are little concave reflective mirrors. They catch the sunlight and reflect the heat into the centre of the flower. And in the early part of the year, in the springtime, the middle of the flower is 2 degrees warmer than the air around it, thus encouraging small flies to land on the flower. Evolution is an amazing thing. These other flowers, these white ones, just as a curiosity, these are called daisies. Daisies. And the name daisy comes from the words day's eye. Because if you ever go out very early in the morning, you'll see that these flowers are closed. And when the sun comes up, the flowers open. And that's why they're called day's eyes, or daisies as we call them today. I think that's a very interesting fact. In fact, 2 interesting facts for the price of 1. Now I think we should look at some pronunciation problems. One problem people have is pronouncing an M at the end of words. A lot of people confuse it and pronounce it very similarly to the letter N at the end of a word. So you need to know the difference between the gym and gin. If you've had a hard day at work and you go to the gym to relax, be careful, somebody might think you're going to the gin, which is quite a different thing. So gym and gin. There's also other words like beam and bean are different things. Beam, bean. Sometimes. There are 2 M's in sometimes. For some people it sounds a bit like sunshine. You see, sunshine has 2 N's. Sometimes there is sunshine. Another 2 words which are often mispronounced. There is a difference between scream and screen. Scream is something you do when you're frightened, and screen is what you look at on your computer or on your phone. You're probably looking at one right now. In fact, screen is a very interesting word. A fire screen was a panel that went between you and a fire in your house to protect you from either direct heat or sometimes to protect furniture from sparks. Sometimes bits jump out of the fire and burn the carpet. So there was a screen to protect you from the fire. And then this idea of protection was also used when they invented cars. The front window of a car is called the windscreen. Okay, it protects you from the wind. It screens you from the wind. And then you have sunscreen, which is another word for sun cream that you put on your skin when you go to the beach. And in military contexts, sometimes they put up a smoke screen. They set off these things to create lots of smoke so that you could move the soldiers forward without being seen by the enemy or something like that. So that's a smoke screen. So there's this screen meaning kind of protect. Then the flat surface of the original fire screen was then reused. As we've said before, a lot of new technology reincorporates old language. That screen was then used to project onto when they were showing a film. So in the early days of cinema, you had a cinema screen, which was also known as the silver screen in those romantic days of early Hollywood. Stars of the silver screen, they used to say. And then screen then became a verb meaning to project, so a film can be screened. And then of course when televisions were invented, they had stars of the small screen, so you have a TV screen. And then it went to computers, and then it went to your phone. And that is why we talk about young people spending too much screen time. And then there's another thing called a screen door, which is made of wire. It's like a wire net or mesh that goes over the door. You see it in these American films sometimes in Mississippi or Louisiana. They need the air to blow through the house, but they don't want the flies to come in. Okay? So then it became a kind of word for to filter. So if you go for a job interview, they might need to screen the new applicants for a job, go through some sort of screening process. And also, you might go through a security screen to enter high security buildings or something like that. So, screen, it can be to protect, it can be to project in the sense of films, or it can be something like filter. So I think you'll agree, screen is a very interesting word. Now, before we finish, let's have a look at some phrasal verbs. Quite often when people ask me what a phrasal verb means, the answer quite often seems to be start. And I was thinking the other day about how many phrasal verbs mean to begin, but they're all quite specific. So I started thinking about it. I found a list of 10 phrasal verbs. They all mean to begin something, and I'm going to put them on the screen right now. So here they are. Turn on, take up, set off, set out, strike up, kick off, break out, launch into and burst into. All of these mean to begin, but they mean to begin very specific things. So let's start at the beginning. Turn on. That's always used for electronic devices. So televisions, radios, that kind of thing. You could turn on the heating, I suppose. Those kind of things, radios, etc. Turn on. And of course it's the opposite of turn off. Take up is used for hobbies, new activities, that kind of thing. So you take up going to the gymnasium, you take up learning languages, you take up going to ceramics classes, swimming, all that kind of stuff. Set up is usually used for a business or some other sort of organisation. So you could set up a company, you could also set up a reading group or something like that. So some kind of organisation. Set off is used for journeys. We set off at 5 o'clock in the morning. Set out. Now this could be used for journeys. You could say we set out at 5 o'clock in the morning. But it's also used on a sort of metaphorical journey, I suppose. You set out to prove something true. You set out to discover something, some sort of intention, some project you're working on. You would set out to do something. Strike up. There's a few things that this one's used for. You strike up conversations, you strike up friendships, and you can also strike up the music. So those are very specific, those. Kick off. Traditionally, that was the phrasal verb to begin a football match. And it used to be quite specific, but now it's moved, and we quite often hear it for meetings, parties, all kinds of things that are going to start. People say, what time does the meeting kick off? Oh, we'll kick off at 2 o'clock. So it's a phrasal verb that came from football. Break out is usually war or diseases, and the phrasal verb can turn into a noun, the outbreak, as this is what we were discussing in class the other day. This is how I started this list. It was the outbreak of war we were discussing. So to break out, war and also diseases break out. Launch into. This is doing something very enthusiastically. Launching into a speech. You can also launch into an attack. So go into something with a lot of enthusiasm and passion. And then burst into song is to start singing spontaneously. Or you can burst into tears when you start crying. So I think that's quite an interesting collection of phrasal verbs, really. All very specific to different things. Learn to love your phrasal verbs. That's what I say. Anyway, that's about all we have time for today. Don't forget to do all the usual things of thumbs up and leaving comments, and yes, you can share it with your friends. This is what things on YouTube are all about. The more you share it with your friends, the more publicity we get, so please do that. Next week we'll be on holiday, so we've got a whole week off, so I'll have to find something else to talk about probably. So yes, I won't see you next week. I'll see you the following week. So have a good Easter. Don't eat too many chocolate eggs. And I'll see you soon. Until then, have a good week. Till next week.